well, time to start looking for a new job. We just started this YouTube channel, and Vitalik's out here just axing all the L2s. No, 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 no. Today, in this video, we're going to talk about what Vitalik actually said, what the people are saying on crypto Twitter, and why I think, or where I think Arbitrum is positioned in all of this. So, real quick, we're going to jump into the post that he actually put out. We're going to touch on the specific points that I think are the most relevant, and then I'll give you my thoughts. So, let's touch on the important stuff. Vitalik here says L2's progress to stage 2 and secondarily on interop has been far slower and more difficult than originally expected. L1 itself is scaling, fees are very low, and gas limits are projected to increase greatly in 2026. Which, by the way, all of that I definitely agree with. I think a lot of people in general were also very, very excited just to see the fact that Vitalik is now actually talking about L1 scaling. A lot of people in the timeline were really, honestly, most concerned about too much focus being put on L2s, but not enough on the L1. I think now that there's much more focus on both, I think a lot of people actually agree with that one. Both of these facts, for their own separate reasons, mean that the original vision of L2s and their role in Ethereum no longer makes sense, and we need a new path. I think this entire thing could have been worded a little differently, but we're going to give it to V. The guy knows, listen, he knows how to get people riled up, and made a lot of headlines, so that's fair enough. This vision no longer makes sense. L1 does not need L2s to be branded shards because L1 is itself scaling, and L2s are not able or willing to satisfy the properties that a true branded shard would require. I've seen at least one explicitly saying that they may never want to go beyond stage 1. Now, he goes on to list a couple of things that if he were to do an L2 today, what he would recommend. And most of it is around very specialized things, opinionated block space, which I'll touch on in a second, not just being a copy and paste of Ethereum. Essentially, Vitalik is bullish on L2s that are doing something meaningfully different, not ones that are launching, trying to be a 1,000th EVM chain that just launched without any meaningful differentiation. He also points out that if you're going to claim Ethereum in your marketing, that the tech better back that statement up. Essentially, if you're a stage 0 rollup with multi-sig, with no other bridge going back to Ethereum, and it's essentially just like, more or less just a glorified multi-sig, you should not be touting Ethereum security in your descriptions or in your marketing, which is, again, fair. So what are people actually saying? Well, lots of people are saying, I told you so. A lot of people from the ecosystem, L1 teams in particular, are taking this opportunity to dunk on, obviously, Vitalik's statements here. Vitalik doesn't care about L2s, and also saying that if you are an L2, maybe you should pivot to being an L1. A lot of L2 teams are saying that they've understood this for quite a long time now, have actually felt quite a similar sentiment, and have actually started to become a lot more opinionated on what they're building and how they're actually approaching the go-to-market for it. And obviously, whether that's true or not is up to debate based on each team. And most of the rest of the ecosystem people, maybe ETH holders, people on crypto Twitter, etc., we're very, very aligned with this. As I mentioned earlier, the old copy and paste general purpose EVM chain approach, it does not work in 2026. To be honest with you, it stopped working, I think, long ago, and a lot of people would agree with that. The bottom line is, if you're going to have a new chain, you need to have some sort of innovative piece that comes along with that. And now let's jump into where Arbitrum stands. So there's two main things I want to touch on. The first one is that there's immense demand for opinionated block space. Custom execution environments for institutions, app-specific ones that change the properties of the core chain that maybe is being built to satisfy whatever need the environment that they're building needs, is something that the Arbitrum chain stack satisfies very, very greatly. Robinhood, as usual, is a great example of this. These guys have an app in Europe, which essentially allows people to buy and sell tokenized stocks. The people in the EU don't need to know necessarily that everything they're buying is running on a chain or the stocks themselves are tokenized. It just works. And that's where the app-specific stuff comes in. That's where the institutional players come in. And that's where I think, if you're launching a chain with the chain as the product, that's where I think you're going wrong. I think a lot of people have been saying that for a long time. But if you're launching a chain as a backend, like Rails for a product, like an app or a front end or whatever it may be, that is where the use case is. That's where the value is. And this idea of opinionated block space includes core changes to the chain itself. So like Vitalik was saying, if you're doing maybe some sort of like ZK-VM thing, or, just some sort of privacy baked onto the chain itself, or maybe like Arbitrum, you're allowing developers to not only code in Solidity, but Rust, C++, etc. with a different VM like Stylus. Core changes that probably would never actually reach Ethereum L1 itself. But to be honest, as an L2, could be an environment for testing, seeing if people like it. Maybe one day we will see Stylus on Ethereum, but even less than just a testing ground for what may come from an L2 to an L1, more so the fact that you can make something that's not possible on Ethereum at all, completely possible in the same kind of ecosystem, but on an L2. And the other thing is that Ethereum still needs massive scale right now. Today. The other day, Arbitrum alone was doing over 3,000 TPS and saw roughly 172 megagas per second of throughput, which, by the way, is a direct result of the recent update that happened on Arbitrum called ArboS 51D. Made a video on that a little earlier. Check that out if you want. But that doesn't include even all of the other traffic that was happening on the other L2s, like Base, for example, that was helping shoulder it for Ethereum. Because frankly, if it wasn't happening on these L2s, it probably would have happened on an Alt L1 like a Solana, because Ethereum today cannot handle all that traffic. But even as time goes on and Ethereum continues to scale, since it's doing it a lot more aggressively now, you may ask yourself, then why do we need Arbitrum in the future if Ethereum is going to scale to where it's at today? In all reality, Ethereum will never be at the same scale as an Arbitrum or as a Base or any other L2, because as Ethereum improves and the execution gets better, ideally the decentralization gets better, so will the L2s that are built on top of it that are actually meaningfully trying to build things for the long term. So just like Ethereum, Arbitrum is constantly improving, it's constantly getting faster, it's constantly getting more robust, it's constantly getting better. It's not good to think about things in like a silo, where like you see, oh my God, Ethereum is gonna scale, it'll make everything obsolete. It's like, no, by the time Ethereum is scaled to, let's just say, being able to handle 100 TPS on the chain, who knows how much scale Arbitrum or other L2s will also be able to handle. So think of it as like very, very complementary. Both need to scale no matter what anyone says. Only saying that L2s need to scale and L1 is crazy, but also saying only L1 needs to scale and L2s won't is also kind of crazy. So while there is truth to us saying, hey, there shouldn't be any more generalized L2s that just make things a little bit faster or just literally look exactly like Ethereum, but it has a different marketing name or something like that, you know, there is an immense purpose for this extra block space. First of all, opinionated block space, like I mentioned earlier, but also this general purpose stuff for the chains that are already established and have tons of users, tons of institutions, companies, and projects building on them, and teams that already have a ton of skin in the game. Arbitrum and other L2s already have a ton of time in market, so launching another EVM L1 or L2 today and thinking you're going to overthrow them is kind of a fool's game, because even if your chain got, has a rabid community, you got tons of funding, is maybe, like I said, even like a tiny bit faster, you know, what you can't buy is that time. You can't buy the trust. You can't buy the lived experience of these chains being live, running in production, these teams operating under markets that are very, very volatile, and knowing what to do when these chains are reaching points of high demand, especially ones that have decentralized autonomous organizations like DAOs, and ones that really are more Ethereum aligned, quote unquote, than ones that are launching today that are making that same claim. So in a nutshell, I personally do agree with Vitalik. I think maybe this could have been worded a little bit differently, but hey, it is what it is. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with Vitalik? Are there enough L2s, or is there room for personalized, opinionated block space, aka L2s that meaningfully differentiate themselves? Let me know in the comments below. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.